Welcome back to the Fazbear Retrospective, the series where I intend on analytically reviewing and eventually ranking every official Five Nights at Freddy's game there is. Last time we took a look at the first game of the series, where we found the game was great as I remembered, still remaining as a horror classic for its haunting atmosphere, simplistic yet enticing gameplay, its mysterious lore, its iconic animatronics, and much more. Today we're going to be looking at its sequel, Five Nights at Freddy's 2, a game that is said to be bigger and grander than the original. How much does it succeed? Is it going to be better than the original? Will it even be good? Well, my friends, let's find out in this episode of the Fazbear Retrospective. Anyway, let's go back yet again to 2014. The first Five Nights at Freddy's game, officially released on August 8th, 2014, was met with immediate success. The popularity of this quaint little horror game skyrocketed into the mainstream on the internet. As I've described in the previous episode of the retrospective, there were multiple gameplays, theories, animations, fan music, and more made of this game. It was clear that a lot of people loved this game, and a decent amount of people were asking for more. Additionally, there was only going to be one of these games because remember, this game was a last-ditch effort for Scott Cawthon and his career in game development. However, due to how much this little game of his became what was essentially Scott's biggest and most successful game of all time out of his years in game development, he decided he would make another Five Nights at Freddy's game. He wanted this one to be bigger, grander, and possibly better than the original. He quickly got to work on the game. During the development of the game, there were a total of 6 teasers posted to Scott's website, scottgames.com. The 6 of them feature some of the new characters that we would go on to see in the final game, such as the Mangle, the Puppet, Withered Freddy, Withered Bonnie, Toy Bonnie, and etc. Some things to note about these teasers. The first teaser for the game featuring Withered Freddy showcases the release as 2015. What this basically means is that the game was supposed to release much later than it ended up releasing. Spoilers for the section, but FNAF 2 would release in late 2014. So seeing that the game was going to release in 2015 is quite interesting and also says a lot about something I'm going to get into later in this retrospective/review. Another thing to note is that the teaser displaying Mangle has FNAF 1 Foxy with her. What's weird is that the other Withered animatronics appear in the other teasers, all except Withered Chica and Withered Golden Freddy. I don't believe there's much meaning to this, but hey, it's neat to point out. As well, Mangle is seen to have a hook. Cool. Additionally, the only other thing to point out with these teasers is that for the Puppets teaser, this one teaser introduced a method that would go on to be used by various people in the community for looking for secrets and Easter eggs within the Scott Games teasers. That being to brighten up the teaser/image, which there would often be secrets within the backgrounds of the teaser. Doing this to this teaser would reveal the puppet. As we're gonna get into, FNAF 2 introduced many staples to FNAF, and this would be one of many. On October 21st, 2014, Scott Cawthon would upload the official trailer for FNAF 2, and it generated a lot of hype. People were excited for this thing. The trailer would provide multiple shots and angles of the animatronics, some gameplay footage, and some hints to both lore and even the overall gameplay with the on-screen text that would appear. There were also some hoaxes and fake secrets from the community that originated with this trailer, which I'll get into much later. As well, the flashlight text over the flashlight that is usually seen on the top left of the corner in the game is notably absent in the trailer. It's also absent in some of the screenshots of the game pre-release. Speaking of absent or scrapped content, there's quite a bit. Some of these can even be found in the game's files. One of which is a texture of what would have been when Toy Chica got into the office, which would have been used in a similar way to when Toy Bonnie enters the office while your mask is on. It's unknown why this was scrapped. Toy Chica, of course, even uses the creepy attack mode version of herself with the white pupil eyes and lack of beak. Another example of scrapped content in the game is the texture of the puppet in the office. This was also scrapped for unknown reasons. As well in the files, a really weird pixelated image can be found which seems to be a skull. The strangest part of all is that the name for it in the files is Mike, obviously referring to the FNAF 1 night guard/protagonist Mike Schmidt. It's likely this might have been used as an in-game hallucination or maybe even a minigame sprite, but who knows. Endo 2 and Shadow Freddy were also initially meant to leave after a second of spotting them, with 3 seconds of static right after. As well, upon the first release of the game, the newspaper at the beginning was different by a little bit. It was more tilted, and also there was a different phone number present. In later updates of the game, the newspaper would be updated to change the phone number to avoid incidents involving fans dialing real phone numbers. And finally, I saved the most notable piece of scrapped content for last, the Toxic Meter. The Toxic Meter was a scrapped gameplay mechanic which prevented the player from keeping the Freddy mask on for too long. The toxic meter would eventually go up and you would die. The only reason why I can see this mechanic being scrapped is because of how the game already had Wither Foxy and the puppets mechanics, which already prevented you from keeping the mask on for too long anyway, so it would have been a pointless addition. With that being said though, a demo for the game would be released on November 10th, 2014 on indie sites like IndieDB, and then, a day later, on November 11th, 2014, Five Nights at Freddy's 2, the full game would be released to the public on Steam for $8. When this game was released, one thing that a lot of fans and players noted was the amount of characters there were in this game in comparison to the first game. The first game has 5 main characters: Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, and Golden Freddy. This obviously does not include smaller characters like Endo-01. Now with the second game, there are now slightly more than double the amount of characters. This time, we got the toy animatronics, which also includes Mangle, Balloon Boy, JJ, and the Puppet, the Withered animatronics, the Shadow animatronics, Endo-02, and for non-animatronic characters, we got the Paper Pals, Jeremy Fitzgerald, Fritz Smith, and Phone Guy yet again. A lot of the animatronics in this game are memorable. I feel like some of them are better than others, but a lot of these guys are memorable. Starting off with the toys, Toy Freddy is one of those characters for me who gets better in later appearances than his first. In FNAF 2, Toy Freddy is honestly a nothing character, I'm sorry. His design's okay, I love his chubbiness, and some of his facial expressions throughout the game can be pretty good at looking quite haunting. However, he lacks some type of unique identity in this game. He doesn't have anything about him that stands out really. As we're going to get to with some characters, they have aspects about them that make them each stand out in a unique way, and it elevates them up as some of the best characters in the FNAF series. However, like I said, Toy Freddy would improve later on in the series. As we'll get to when we eventually cover Ultimate Custom Night in the Fazbear Retrospective, Toy Freddy would later end up becoming a good character due to more unique traits being given to him, mostly from a personality and identity angle, but as he currently stands, he's kind of bland and nothing. I'm sorry to the Toy Freddy fans out there. Next, we got Toy Bonnie, who in my personal opinion is one of the best characters to come from this game and is honestly one of my personal favorite characters. His design is what I love the most about him. He rides the fine line between goofy and kid-like, but creepy and terrifying. His stares that he can make and some of his camera poses are genuinely some of the best horror to come from this game. Now, Toy Bonnie, in terms of gameplay and his AI, is an absolute bitch. He is known to be RNG reliant, especially on later nights. However, that is more of a sin for the gameplay than the character itself, if I'm honest. I still love Toy Bonnie, and even though he's already a really good character, just like Toy Freddy, he's improved on later too. I still love Toy Bonnie, and even though he's already a really good character, just like Toy Freddy, he's improved later on too. I also find the whole ordeal with his guitar very interesting. Basically, Bonnie and Toy Bonnie in FNAF 1 to 2 respectively had a certain brand of guitar, that being a Gibson Flying V guitar. Of course, it was a copyrighted guitar design from Gibson Incorporated, so when it came to the remastered ports for the original FNAF games, FNAF 2 included, and then eventually later FNAF games like Help Wanted, Scott, Click Team, Stevel, and everybody involved had to replace Bonnie and Toy Bonnie's guitars with a non-copyrighted guitar design. That's why Toy Bonnie's original guitar in the remastered ports of this game is taken out, and we have honestly pretty weird renders like this in said remastered ports of FNAF 2. Yeah, pretty wacky stuff. Now, Toy Chica. Oh god. Alright, let me clear the elephant in the room. Yes, Toy Chica's design looks like she was made for sex appeal. Chica from the first game was already getting type of attention from fans, so hey, why not make the next variation of Chica be literally what the fans from 2014 thought Chica was? Her design is in my opinion. I never really cared for her, even Toy Chica herself as a character. Within the game, she has a similar problem as Toy Freddy, where she has no unique traits or form of identity to make her stand out from other characters. Again, not even her design gives her points. Toy Freddy at least gets a few points in terms of design. For Toy Chica though, something that actually elevates her a bit is how she looks without her beak and has the possessed eyes, basically her attack mode. She looks pretty creepy in that look, and honestly, that's enough for me to prefer her over Toy Freddy, at least in just this game. Just like the others I've talked about so far, Toy Chica is also improved on as a character later on in the series. However, we get to who in my opinion is the best character in the entire game and is one of my personal favorite characters in the entirety of the franchise, that being Mangle. I love her so damn much. Mangle is the best character in this game for me due to various factors. One of her biggest factors being her design. She looks amazing. I love how she's basically a broken mess with a bunch of endo parts, and it's such a unique design in comparison to a lot of the characters in this game. If I had to summarize her design with one word, that word would be just cool. She has a cool design. Secondly, he has a lot of world building and lore to him. I love how he's a take apart and put back together attraction for little kids to play with during the day, hence why he looks like the way he does. I basically love how there's a fixed version of him called Funtime Foxy, obviously not to be confused with Funtime Foxy from Sister Location. It's honestly really interesting lore that gives Mangle much more identity in comparison to other characters because we don't really get this much interesting lore for individual characters in this game. Mangle has her own story going on, and due to that, she's one of the greats in this game, or at least in my opinion, is the greatest in this game. As well, I just love the whole male and female pronoun trolling thing that Scott started in this game with him. This of course was a joke among FNAF fans that they would end up loving, so it would become a running gag throughout the series, not even just with Mangle. It would also go for other characters like her, such as Sister Location's Funtime Foxy and Lolbit. All around, Mangle is a character I adore, and is even a fan favorite character among people in the FNAF community. The next character I want to touch on is the child himself, Balloon Boy. This may or may not be a hot take. I don't know what the current consensus on Balloon Boy nowadays is. He was definitely hated back then, but nowadays, I have no idea. Whatever the case, I like Balloon Boy. A decent amount, actually. Balloon Boy is a good character. He's not the best character ever, but I like Balloon Boy for multiple different reasons. The first reason being, I just like his role within the pizzeria. He's a kid that hands out balloons to other kids. It's a neat part of world building within the pizzeria, and it makes it feel more like a real and actual pizzeria location visited by people, especially children and their families. Another reason too is honestly I just love how much of a fucking troll he is within the gameplay. When he gets in the office, him just laughing at the fact he got in and you're screwed basically because he has your batteries is so hilarious, I'm sorry. And speaking of stealing batteries, a third reason why I like him as a character is his gameplay mechanic, which is actually pretty unique in comparison to the other characters. For one, he doesn't kill you, which already sets him apart from everyone else in a good way. Secondly, him taking your flashlight batteries specifically helps give Withered Foxy purpose, which in return also gives Balloon Boy a purpose. As I'm going to get into later with the gameplay section of this review, the gameplay in FNAF 2 is so dull sometimes due to how basically almost every character has the same damn mechanic involving the mask. And while Balloon Boy is one of those characters you must fend off from using the mask, he also gets points above a lot of the other mask characters simply just for what he does when you don't succeed in fending him off. The others just kill you. Balloon Boy? No, he's different. He stays in the office and takes away a core gameplay mechanic used for, funnily enough, one of the more unique characters in this game when it comes to gameplay mechanics. Balloon Boy is honestly a pretty good character in this game, which is, well, the fact he's a human animatronic in a sea of animal animatronics just makes him stand out so much more in an interesting, good way. All around, honestly one of the better characters in this game. Next character I want to discuss is the Puppet. The Puppet is honestly one of the best characters in both this game and the whole franchise. She's a very memorable character, whether it be her honestly quite perfect design that's extremely iconic or her interesting lore and backstory. Even though we admittedly don't know the Puppet's full story by Pizzeria Simulator, we're still given pieces to her story in this game, which makes her such a standout character. She's also just in general one of the more unique characters within the game because of every aspect involving her. She has one of the most unique gameplay mechanics, one of the most unique designs, one of the most unique spots in the pizzeria to stay in, one of the most unique characters lore-wise, etc, etc. I also like how there's some minor focus put into her via Phone Guy's comments about never liking her in the phone calls. In all honesty, what else is there that hasn't been said about the Puppet by nearly everybody? She's one of the most interesting characters there is in FNAF, and we can thank this game for introducing her. My second favorite character in this game, right behind Mangle. Now let's carry on to the Withered Animatronics. I truly do like the Withered Animatronics a lot. They're some of the most well-designed characters in the series in all honesty, however some do stand out better than others. Starting off with Withered Freddy, even though I like him, he doesn't have anything special going on for him. Well, besides the fact he's a character that constantly appears on merchandise despite never getting merchandise for himself up until rather recently. Damn. His camera poses can be pretty cool, but all around there's better Withereds. Unfortunately, Withered Freddy, despite appearing in some later games like FNAF World and Help Wanted, doesn't get any notable traits and qualities as a character as the series goes on, which is unlike Toy Freddy, Toy Bonnie, and Toy Chica who do. So Withered Freddy is stuck being a basic character, which sucks a lot. He deserved more time in the spotlight. Next, we got Withered Bonnie, and in my personal opinion, Withered Bonnie is the best Withered animatronic, and yes, it's because of his design. But do you really blame him? It's fucking sick. The fact fact he lacks a face makes him such a standout from other characters in this game and gives him a lot of memorability and identity. Not even just the lack of a face, there's also smaller details about him that make him interesting, like his eyes changing color constantly from white to red. All these traits form which is honestly a pretty cool and honestly kind of terrifying looking character. I feel like the lack of a face also helps with the feeling he gives off when seen in parts and service of looking lifeless. It's haunting in ways I can't really put a finger on. Ooh. His camera poses in general can look pretty creepy as well because it looks like a lifeless suit just walking around, which admittedly is thanks to the lack of a face. The other Withered animatronics kind of give that vibe off too, but Withered Bonnie does it the most effectively in my eyes because of the design attributes that I've already detailed. Really fantastic character. Third favorite character right behind the puppet who's behind Mangle. Next we got Withered Chica, who's the second best Withered animatronic and is another great character. Even though Withered Bonnie is terrifying in his own right, I feel like Withered Chica is the creepiest and most terrifying Withered animatronic and might honestly be the creepiest character in the whole game. It's all thanks to her position to not only the cameras but the office. The way she looks just gives eerie vibes to me and kind of rivals some of the character poses of the animatronics from FNAF 1. Again, how she looks in the office is honestly when she's at her most terrifying because it looks like she's staring into your soul. On top of that, with how her beak and jaw is, which is honestly the cherry on top, her jump scare honestly makes her even more lifeless too, which is a rare positive because, spoiler alert, the jump scares in this game are something I'm not a fan of. I also like how she contributes to the mystery of the Paper Pals, which I'll get into later when we talk about them. I think it's very clear that Withered Bonnie and Withered Chica were the two main Withered animatronics that fans and people in general like the most, as these two are usually the ones seen get more focus and spotlight than the others. Hell, besides Withered Golden Freddy, which he had to be in this soon to be mentioned in game for lore reasons, Withered Bonnie and Withered Chica are the two Withereds included in Ultimate Custom Night. It sucks for Withered Freddy and Foxy, but hey, at least Withered Chica as well as Withered Bonnie got more time to shine as the series went on. Speaking of, we got Withered Foxy. Withered Foxy is probably the third best Withered animatronic in this game, all thanks to the fact he's one of the more unique designs in this game in comparison to basically almost every character. The fact he's not fooled by the mask and you must use your flashlight to fend him off is a pretty interesting mechanic for the game, even if Withered Foxy can be a goddamn prick in terms of difficulty. His design is honestly pretty cool too. There's nothing really notable about his design unlike Withered Bonnie or Withered Chica, but I still think he looks cool regardless. Now, in terms of later on in the series, Withered Foxy is sort of similar to Withered Freddy, where he doesn't get many unique traits or details about him to make him stand out in the series. Although, he probably gets a little bit more than Withered Freddy simply due to his appearance in Foxy.exe and FNAF World Update 2. Withered Freddy appears in that too, but Withered Foxy is the more notable and standout appearance in that minigame. Anyway, yeah, Withered Foxy is a pretty cool and good character, but he's not one of the game's best. Withered Golden Freddy is next for characters, and honestly, he's the only Withered animatronic I don't really care for. It's more of his design. It's personally really bland looking to me. I've never been a fan of the shade of yellow used for this guy. I'll always stand by the fact that his appearance in FNAF 1 is superior. I'll give him this though. The fact that he can change into a floating head can honestly be pretty creepy at times, even if it results in one of the more lame jump scares in this game, so Withered Golden Freddy gets that. His floating head form is pretty cool. This version of Golden Freddy reappears in Ultimate Custom Night even though FNAF 1 Golden Freddy appears in the game's ending cutscene. No clue what was going on there. Otherwise, that's all I really have to say about him. He's the weakest Withered animatronic for me, and he's a downgrade in comparison to his FNAF 1 counterpart. Now we carry on to the extra characters. We'll start off with the Shadow animatronics. Both are Easter egg characters. Shadow Freddy and Shadow Bonnie are pretty good characters. I will say, FNAF 3 gives both of them much more identity, but as they are in this game, their purpose for being in it lore-wise is really good. Their black and purple shadowy designs are pretty interesting and unique in comparison to the other characters in this game. They can be pretty creepy to spot out when playing the game unexpectedly. These two are just cool secrets, crashing the game as well, chef's kiss. I still prefer Endo 1 because of what he represents in FNAF 1. But Endo 2 has some pretty good lore implications with him. Due to that, he's an interesting character, and he's another character that will give you a reaction upon seeing him unexpectedly while playing the game. Also, his design is just cool and interesting to look at. From a design perspective, Endo 2 does clear Endo 1, I will give him that. Now for a secret character I don't care about as much, JJ. All she really is just a feminine recolor of Balloon Boy, and sure, I guess she can look pretty creepy looking at you from under the desk. However, I don't think there's much substance to her in comparison to the other secret characters. The Shadow animatronics in Endo 2 offer lore implications that make them interesting as characters to look into. JJ doesn't really have any lore implications. We just know she has to be canon somehow because of her reappearance in Ultimate Custom Night. However, nothing is really known about this character, and it's not like it's meant to be ambiguous or mysterious on purpose. No, it just seems like she's just a character Scott forgot about. Whoops. But yeah, I don't really care for JJ, or as some people called her back then, Balloon Girl. Back to a more interesting secret character, the Paper Pals. I like how one of them moves and can be located in the office. It always has been a pretty creepy detail to me, and it always has been a fun mystery on how it got there. The most popular theory has always been that Withered Chica had something to do with it due to her covering its initial spot in the party room on the camera. While the Paper Pals are not really that relevant to the overall lore and story of the series, their whole thing in FNAF 2 is honestly pretty interesting as its own thing, and is something that gets you to actually think about, which is typically a positive with a game like this. Overall, the Paper Pals are pretty neat. Now we carry on to the humans. Jeremy Fitzgerald, the main night guard of the game. He's interesting, solely just because he's theorized to be the victim of the Bite of 87. Outside of that, nothing really much to him. Again, there's theories about him being the same character as other Jeremys or other characters in later games like the Bonnie Mask Fully in FNAF 4, or the Jeremy in Help Wanted, or Cassie's father from Ruined in Help Wanted 2, but those are just theories. Fritz Smith really has nothing to him. He's just a custom night security guard. His name sounds so fucking fake though, it's hilarious. And of course, Phone Guy's back in this game. I love how his reappearance helps play into the somewhat reveal that FNAF 2 is a prequel. Furthermore, Phone Guy has the same energy and quirks that I loved about him in the first game. I love how he gives some hints to the lore and even the gameplay to help you out just a bit, but still mysterious, so you can still figure it out yourself. As we'll get into later, one of his phone calls in one of the nights is one of the creepiest and terrifying parts of this game for me, so there's that incoming. All around though, a lot of the characters in FNAF 2 are really great and are some of the best characters that come from the series. A lot of them are memorable, whether it be they're interesting as secrets or Easter eggs that get you to think harder about the game, whether it be they're interesting in terms of lore and story, whether it be they have a really cool design or even a concept for the character, whether they contribute to the horror or creepy factor of the game, or whether they're unique in terms of their gameplay mechanics. Regardless, most of the characters in this game are pretty neat, and this game in particular would not be the same without a lot of these guys. So, the gameplay. The gameplay was an aspect about the first game that was respected by a lot of people due to how it put you in an engaging loop of checking and closing the doors, checking the cameras, so on and so forth, all the while managing your power, you know, resource management. Now, since this game was basically advertised and promised to be a bigger and supposedly better experience than its predecessor, no doors, a mask, all of that, is the gameplay of FNAF 2 better than the first game's gameplay? If I have to be honest, no, not really. I know. Well, what's wrong with the gameplay of FNAF 2? There's actually multiple aspects about the gameplay in this game that kind of sours the overall experience for me. One of the biggest critiques I have towards this game is how nearly every animatronic in the game have basically the same base mechanic, that being to use the mask. If it were only like a few characters you had to use the mask on, I'd appreciate the gameplay of this game so much more. However, it's basically everybody. All of the toy animatronics and every Withered animatronic except for Withered Foxy. Withered Foxy and the puppet are the only two characters in this entire game that have a unique mechanic backing them up. Balloon Boy's a little unique like we discussed in the characters section simply because of the fact he doesn't kill. He steals what is basically this game's resource management, which I actually do like and is something I would keep about the game. However, every other masked character is nearly the same. Sure, the Withereds, minus Golden Freddy, and Toy Freddy and Toy Bonnie do blackouts, which is different from the other masked characters which you just have to put the mask on. Even then, for the blackout characters, you still have to keep the mask on. The reason why I have an issue with this is because it lacks originality and creativity. I feel like if some of the other characters in this game had their own mechanics that were different from each other, it would make a much more interesting experience, would honestly make the game so much more fun to play. For example, for Withered Bonnie, what if you tried to find his face in one of the cameras? Have it be like Rockstar Bonnie in Ultimate Custom Night where it can only be found in certain cameras. This would also fix another critique with the gameplay, which I'll get into pretty soon. Maybe do the same thing for Toy Chica where you need to find either her cupcake or her beak in one of the cameras. Again, it'll fix another critique for the gameplay that I'll get into. I feel like Withered Freddy should have his own mechanic that does not involve the mask, simply because I feel like it's kind of foolish he would get tricked by his own face. There's probably a lore reason behind this that completely justifies it, but gameplay wise, I don't know, it's kind of stupid. Same for Withered Golden Freddy. He's literally Golden Freddy. He's the important character. I feel like if you take out his appearance in the office where you have to use the mask and you keep just his mechanic in the hallway where you shouldn't flash him much, it would be so much more interesting because it plays into the flashlight mechanic. Additionally, it would make him more creepy because at that point, you would think of him just as a floating head, which is a pretty terrifying concept. Or hell, if you want to really take advantage of the resource management aspect of the flashlight, how about the opposite of the current mechanic and flash him to make him go away? Speaking of flashing, maybe Mangle can work as a character sort of like Withered Foxy, where you have to flash her because she isn't fooled by the mask. It can even be the same reason why Foxy isn't fooled. He's broken, so is Mangle. That basically leaves Balloon Boy, Withered Chica, Toy Freddy, and Toy Bonnie as the only masked characters, which is fine enough with me. Maybe you could add one more animatronic to the slew of masked characters, preferably not Withered Freddy or Golden Freddy though, for the reasons I've already stated. Another major critique I have with this game is the fact none of the other cameras are utilized outside the prize corner. It genuinely feels like the other cameras were like afterthoughts. FNAF 1 had kind of this issue too, but not to the extreme this game has. What I offered previously in terms of mechanics for Toy Chica and Withered Bonnie could fix this issue. Basically, offer more mechanics that involve you using the other cameras. It's a big building and it would make the experience much more fun, but also stressful in a terrifying way, adding somewhat to the horror of the game. The only other major critique I have towards the gameplay is how in the later nights of the game, the RNG seems to be really ridiculous at times. Now, I'm not saying this because I suck at the game. I've beaten 1020 mode in this game and have recorded proof of it via livestream. I just think there is a genuine issue with the AI and RNG elements in this game that basically turn people away from playing this game, especially with Toy Bonnie. Withered Foxy maybe can contribute to that, but it's often or not Toy Bonnie. Some say the puppet contributes to the RNG, but it's the other characters and your actions during the night that contribute to how worn down the music box is. I feel like if there was some more overall balancing when it comes to certain characters, I think the gameplay would be much more consistently enjoyable. Now, those are my main critiques for the gameplay of FNAF 2. However, I will say this. Despite the fact that the gameplay is a downgrade from the first game, I still think FNAF 2 is pretty decent gameplay-wise. Even with its flaws, FNAF 2 still serves as a mostly enjoyable experience with a stress-inducing gameplay loop that puts you at the edge of your seat. I think it's partly because this game has a mostly faster pace, at least in comparison to FNAF 1. As much as the gameplay in FNAF 1 is amazing, and I genuinely prefer it over FNAF 2 simply thanks to how it's well balanced, it's simply made, etc., it is admittedly much more slower pace, and I think it's that way in the first game just to emphasize on the game's horror. As we're going to get into an upcoming section of the review, the horror in FNAF 2 is a major downgrade to FNAF 1, but I think because of how this game sacrificed good horror, it's basically received decent, maybe even good gameplay. Yes, there is flaws with character mechanic concepts, there is flaws with gameplay tool concepts, and there are flaws with character balancing. However, I can confidently say I was never bored playing this game. I felt a level of intensity while playing, and in my personal opinion, that is always a good thing when playing a FNAF game, and honestly any game really. I have constantly preached this on my channel, and I will always say it. The gameplay is the most important and vital part of a video game. Why? It is literally a video game. You play the game to play it. If the gameplay is good and fun and not boring, then it is a good game. If the gameplay is not fun, it is boring, and you feel nothing from it, it is not a good game. It may excel at other aspects like story or graphics and visuals or soundtrack or characters, etc., but if the gameplay is not very good, it is not good as a game. Now, there are some exceptions where the story and writing of the game is the gameplay. Look at Doki Doki Literature Club or Day Shift at Freddy's, etc. If that's the case, then the gameplay, ergo the game itself, can still be good without actual proper gameplay. It's just a game type or genre at that point that up to the personal taste of certain people. However, that is not the case with this game. This game is meant to have a gameplay loop and formula type of gameplay, and for the most part, it does it pretty well. Additionally, I like how in this game, it throws you straight into the action. In FNAF 1, one of the only critiques I had with that game was how Night 1 is just fucking boring because it's really slow paced because it's meant to be a learn the gameplay mechanics type of night. Basically a tutorial without actually being called a tutorial. However, in this game, literally by halfway into Night 1, you're thrown straight in. Music box, the toy animatronics minus BB and Mangle, oh boy. I think it also helps with the fact that the nights in FNAF 2 are shorter in comparison to FNAF 1, allowing for such a faster pace within the gameplay. Slow-paced gameplay can work and still be great, for example FNAF 1, but fast-paced gameplay can also work and be just as good or even great, and while I don't think FNAF 2 is a great gameplay, it certainly has good and or decent gameplay. One final aspect about the gameplay I like is the flashlight mechanic I kept bringing up as resource management in the critiques when explaining ways on how to give other characters unique mechanics. It is what I said it was. It's resource management, came to the power in FNAF 1. Since it is resource management, I like how you have to be careful with how much you use it and that it can run out. I have personally never liked mechanics in fan-made recreations of FNAF 1 and 2, whether it be fan games or Roblox remakes or etc., where you can get power back or get flashlight battery back via like a generator or whatever. I never liked those fan-made mechanics because it takes away the resource management aspect that it served to present in the original games. The point is that you're supposed to lose these resources the more and more you use them. The fact you can't get back any in the night is meant to add tension and stakes to the gameplay. If you could get the resources back in the same night, then there goes all the tension and thrill and excitement when playing the game because you have a higher chance of winning. And one last thing I'll mention, I'm glad the Toxic Meter didn't make it into the final game. It would have been a pointless addition, I feel like, since you've already had Withered Foxy and the puppet to deal with. Two characters whose mechanics literally serve the purpose of making sure you don't just keep the mask on all night. Otherwise, that is what I have to say about the gameplay of FNAF 2. It's extremely flawed and mostly concept to be fair, but there are parts of the execution that need to be improved on. Otherwise, it's solid gameplay at the end of the day. It's a downgrade of FNAF 1's gameplay, but it's still pretty enjoyable and action-packed gameplay that some people might prefer over FNAF 1's more slower-paced gameplay. While I'm not one of those people who prefers it, I do like it. However, the gameplay is not the only aspect of FNAF 2 that is a downgrade in comparison to FNAF 1. The only other aspect that's a downgrade, I'd argue, is a much worse downgrade in comparison to this aspect. Case in point, as I said at the end of the previous section, this aspect of the game is a huge downgrade in comparison to the first game, that being the game's horror and atmosphere. As I've discussed in the FNAF 1 retrospective, that game succeeded really well with horror and atmosphere because of so many things. One being the unique color palette used throughout the cameras to make sure the cameras looked mysterious and dark. That also goes for the dimly lit office that was kind of an unnerving setting to be in. As well, there were very creepy sound cues and sound effects that either had an actual purpose or were just there to throw you off. The animatronics also had their own poses in the security cameras that made them look like silent statues and looked extremely ominous, topped with very minor details like the cupcake in the office staring at you. All of these aspects form what was the perfect atmosphere of the first game. A lot of those aspects and details are mostly just gone in FNAF 2. For one, the office is just too bright. It's trying to come across as dimly lit just like the first game, but it simply doesn't work because, well, look at it. It's too bright. It's not unnerving at all. I feel nothing towards this office. If anything, the office simply looks the way it is just to make way for the gameplay of the game to make sense and work. You mean to tell me that a security office is going to have this big ass hallway right in front of it? It never came across as realistic to me. FNAF 1's security office looks more like a security office than the FNAF 2 office, at least in my opinion. Also, a lot of the sound cues and sound effects don't really hold a punch in this game in comparison to the previous. The sound effects in this game, while some of them have meaning for why they play, all still come across as randomly put together and don't come across as scary or creepy. They lack the ability to be subtle. They don't sound haunting or eerie either. Now, the other individual rooms in this game are pretty well designed, I must say. They have a lot going for each of them and provide a decent amount of details to be amazed at. It feels more like a children's pizzeria in this game, especially with the party rooms and the prize corner. However, I will say, I think using the flashlight on the cameras ruins any eerie or mystery vibes they could have had going for them. It just kind of ruins the atmosphere and vibes of this game even further, especially since I think some of the animatronic character poses actually look so much more creepy and better with the camera lights off. Also, I just need to say this, the jump scares in this game are worse in the first game. Some of them are literal moving PNGs and it's just ugh. Now, I need to probably say this right now. A lot of the later FNAF games down the road mostly steer away from creepy and eerie horror and try to be their own things. They're still classified as horror, but they tend to go for a different type of horror that's admittedly much more tame. That's why when it comes to those games, I'm mostly not going to be that hard on its horror elements, lack thereof perhaps. But with this game on the other hand, I am going to criticize its horror because this game is trying to aim to have a very similar approach as the first game. Horror that succeeds by atmosphere and feelings of mystery and ambiguity. I think this game mostly fails at that, something it attempted to be. I don't want to completely dunk on this game's horror though, mostly because I think there are still a couple of moments that are pretty creepy or terrifying. There's the night sex phone call for this game, which has always been pretty terrifying to me because of the implications that are made from what is said by Phone Guy. The implications of what just happened are pretty messed up. It's topped with the additional panic and worry you can hear in Phone Guy's voice as he tells you about it. It's pretty unnerving. Another moment from this game that has always stuck out to me are the rare screens, there being 3 each for FNAF 2. One of Toy Bonnie, one of Withered Freddy, and one of Withered Foxy. FNAF 1 had some too of just Bonnie, and I forgot to mention those in the FNAF 1 retrospective, but the FNAF 1 rare screens as well as the FNAF 2 ones are really terrifying because they're just single screens that give off such eerie and distinct vibes. They give a feeling that something's off, and it really puts your mind in a chilling circle, especially since the FNAF 2 ones lack any eyes. They give feelings of emptiness. Can't believe I'm saying this, but FNAF 2 has better rare screens than FNAF 1, meaning that FNAF 2 did something better than FNAF 1 in terms of horror. Your ears don't deceive you. And the only other thing to talk about in terms of FNAF 2's horror are the post-night cutscenes. This shit is the standout horror moment, or well, moments of FNAF 2. These moments are brief moments in between nights, and they bring back the eerie and chilling vibes and atmosphere FNAF 1 had. The sounds, ambience, and music that play, the dark pizzeria, the fact Bonnie and Chica eventually stare directly at you, Golden Freddy staring directly at you when he shows up, and then the puppet not only just staring at you again, but following your eye movement, which is reused for Phantom Puppet in FNAF 3. It's also just topped off with the fact you're in the POV of Freddy, and the fact the puppet is there, which gives very dark implications involving the murdered children incident and everything, which adds another layer of darkness. It's also subtle with its implications, which is something FNAF 1 got right with its more darker undertones. All around, while the horror and atmosphere of FNAF 2 is a huge disappointment and a downgrade to FNAF 1 for numerous details that make it just not as scary, there's still some pretty terrifying stuff to be found within this game. So at the very least, the horror of FNAF 2 isn't all bad, not in the slightest, just there could have been room for improvement. Now, this is an aspect of the game that is really good. You remember the lore in FNAF 1 that was kept pretty mysterious and ambiguous because FNAF 1 was meant to be a standalone game? Well, that mysterious and ambiguous lore gets much more focused and spotlight in FNAF 2. With a sequel that attempted to be bigger and grander than the first, of course Scott took the lore to another level with the sequel, and this is something that becomes recurring as we continue on with the other games in the retrospective. However, FNAF 2 in terms of lore gets it right. The big thing that came from this part of FNAF 2 are the 8-bit minigames. These 8-bit minigames become a staple in the FNAF games going forward and are consistently a method used to give lore clues in the games. There are 4 minigames in total. Each minigame has their own piece of lore to tell and gives very interesting story reveals. I also think the 8-bit minigames are a good way to give these lore clues conceptually because of the fact that this is all about pizzeria with likely arcade games which have similar graphics to the minigames. So it's also just a cool and quaint framing device for the storytelling. Also, the fact one of the minigames spell out save them and weird type of spelling is also pretty chilling, but also pretty good for lore. Like I said, these minigames absolutely become a huge staple within this series, and the fact that this was the first game to do so, absolutely wonderful. I also like the implications given with the post-night cutscenes, basically relating to the aftermath of the murdered children incident through the POV of one of the victims. It's just so damn cool and honestly interesting to think about. I also respect the fact that Afton's name is not revealed yet, so we still have a mysterious killer at this point in the game's timeline release-wise. It's keeping the mystery FNAF 1 started going, and it's going pretty strong. We at least get somewhat of a visual of the man, which is obviously who fans dubbed as the purple guy at the time. Pretty neat. The mystery on whether or not that's a phone or some type of weapon in his hand was also interesting because it opened up theories that phone guy is the purple guy. The whole mystery behind the Bite of 87 is at its peak in this game because it supposedly happened around the time of this game. Basically, we have culprits and suspects who did it this time around, and it just makes us theorize all about it, which is pretty good. Also, I must mention the name drop of Fredbear's in one of the phone calls, which also, phone guy gives lore tidbits yet again in his calls, just like in the first game, which is pretty cool. There's the appearances of the shadow animatronics, which gives mysterious hints. The interesting mix-up with how the paycheck says November, but Phone Guy and other sources for this game call it a summer job. There's also how this game is a prequel to FNAF 1, which was such a jaw-dropping moment back in the day. There's just plenty of interesting details involving lore that originate from this game that makes it so much more unique in comparison to the first game. That's not to even mention the game files, which has a lot of interesting shit hidden in them, especially with 8-bit Mangle, which its file name says he was here. Pretty haunting. The files also revealing JJ's name as JJ, as well as Shadow Bonnie's full name, that being RWQFSFASXC. The It's Him text, as well the whole sock puppet name thing. These were pretty interesting finds back in the day, and they still are interesting. However, there's an argument to be made that there's almost nothing to the lore of this game, simply thanks to how a lot of aspects are either forgotten about, like the toys and save them, or aspects that are treated better in later games like the shadows and the puppet. I don't really agree that makes this game full of nothing lore-wise, simply thanks to how it at least introduces these aspects. It provides more to the world of this series, and that's not always a bad thing. Even if some story beats are done better later on, we can at least thank this game for introducing them at all. If FNAF 2 got anything right the most, it was definitely the lore. The lore in this game makes it such a standout from the series, and is probably why this game is heavily regarded as a fan-favorite game within the series to a lot of people. This game did what the previous did, but amped it up a bit to the next level, and for that, the lore in this game is pretty damn great. Now, this will be a rather small section, and I won't focus too much on it, but I do feel the need to bring this up because it may be a possibility for why the game's flaws exist. Was FNAF 2 rushed? In my personal opinion, yes. The main piece of evidence is how the first teaser for this game revealed that the game was going to release in 2015, but as we all know, the game released a year earlier in 2014. Why did it release early? Who knows. I know Scott is no stranger to releasing games early, but I genuinely think this game released too early, and it suffered because of that. Other pieces of evidence I have for this claim are details throughout the game that would have probably had some thought put into it otherwise if given more time. One being how in the prize corner, this poster of the main 4 toys has the glaring issue of how Mangle is the only one without a visible full body. Mangle is literally just a head in this poster, unlike the other toy animatronics in it. Keep in mind, Mangle was not intended to be a take apart and put back together attraction from the start, so for their marketing and promotion etc. for the pizzeria, it would feature Mangle's full body. Interesting, huh? As well, I want to point out to the other downgrade that is the game over screen in this game. In FNAF 1, we got to see what happens to the player. In this game, it's literally just withered Freddy looking at us with our mask on, which is basically a black screen for the most part. How come this sudden shift? Additionally, there's also how in FNAF 2, there's no kitchen to be seen, not even on the building map. Literally, the bathrooms and vents appear on the camera map. Why not the kitchen? It's not like the safe room where it's a special room that is basically hidden away. How can this newly opened pizzeria operate and have business without there being pizza being made in a kitchen? Speaking of newly opened pizzeria, why is there already deterioration in the pizzeria if it's not that old yet? There's also how this mess of a puddle in the party room 2 with a slippery floor sign is just there the entire week we play in the game, and it's never cleaned up at all during the day shift apparently. You're really telling me they kept that mess there all week? Come on, really? And as well, there's the fact that if Mangle really is a take apart and put back together attraction, do you think she would look different in his appearance throughout each night of the game? You mean to also tell me the kids who somehow have the illogical strength to take apart and put back together literal metal, I may add, just put together the same damn formation with Mangle's parts every single day? Are these kids regulars to the pizzeria and show up every day to play with Mangle, and they do the same thing with Mangle every time, and that's why Mangle is the same every night in terms of her appearance? Now, I need to acknowledge, I am fully aware that these are basically nitpicks. However, I feel like there are also pieces of evidence that at least prove the game was somewhat rushed, even if it's just a little bit. And what I'm trying to say is that with these pieces of evidence that prove FNAF 2 is rushed, the fact it's rushed can further explain why aspects like the gameplay and horror are not as good and have flaws that reek of unoriginality and thrown together parts. All in all, was FNAF 2 really rushed? Yes, I think it was, point blank. However, this is all just something to think about. I'm just gonna get out of the way. This game also blew the fuck up. When this game was released, it received the same amount of attention, if not more, as FNAF 1 did. This game had a massive impact, and it resulted in many things within the community that were starting to become bigger. There was a lot more popular hoaxes this time around. One included the Grey Puppet, one included Shadow BB, one included a golden toy Freddy animatronic, another was this shadowy man in the main hall camera, and the most popular hoax from around this time was arguably the purple guy animatronic, which a lot of people, including myself, believed was real at the time. Lore-wise, it would make no sense why a purple guy animatronic would be made, despite the books later on proving that robots/animatronics can be made based off of real people. However, it was believable enough at the time. Some other hoaxes were also ones involving the FNAF 2 trailer, one of them being how at the beginning, some say if you reverse the kids singing London Bridge, you would hear Mike killed all. Obviously this would imply Mike Schmidt from the first game was the murderer. There's also how near the end of the trailer for Wither Foxy's jump scare, it sounds like he's screaming freedom. Yeah, no, sorry. This was never true and still isn't, Chief. Plus, isn't that just the normal jump scare sound for FNAF 2 that remains in the final game? Some previous creators that made it big with the first FNAF game, like Markiplier and Game Theory, made videos on FNAF 2 which gathered a lot of attention. However, some creators at the same time would rise to fame with this game, and not FNAF 1. The main one that comes to mind is Dalko. Dalko did make videos and streams about FNAF 1, but he wouldn't get huge until FNAF 2, where he made theory and analysis videos about said game. Believe it or not, Dalko was the first person ever to encounter Endo02 in the game and to post it on YouTube, which led to a shoutout by another rising creator because of FNAF 2, Fusion Z Gamer. Fusion basically started out making FNAF 2 theory and analysis videos as well, along with normal gameplays. Both Dalko and Fusion, but especially Dalko, would go on to become major players in the FNAF community who are even still active with it to this very day, both even having ties to Scott Cawthon himself, which has led to a lot of fun surprises in the FNAF community. All of that can be traced back to FNAF 2. Another creator who did make content for FNAF 1 but didn't get fully recognized and huge until FNAF 2 was Pymations. Pymations is an animator who makes animations on various stuff and still does that type of content to this day. However, his FNAF animations are seen as some of his most notable and popular animations, that being the 5 AM at Freddy series. This series of his wouldn't blow up until the release of 5 AM at Freddy's the prequel, an animation that focused on FNAF 2.
Down. No! I'm the only one in this damn place who can see through that disguise! Balloon Boy, back me up here!
I don't really care if he's Freddy. I'm just trying to get my hands on his sweet, succulent AA batteries.
This animation was seen as hilarious by many people and served as a great comedic parody of FNAF 2, and is even seen as nostalgic to people who grew up with FNAF 2 and the content surrounding it. This video would bring a lot of attention to Pymations and his work, and that's all thanks to FNAF 2. Another creator who rose to fame thanks to FNAF 2 was Smike. Smike is someone that has both a loyal fan base and a loyal hate base, and that was even true back in the FNAF 2 days. However, a lot of people still do look fondly back at his content, which would typically be top 10s and theory/analysis videos.
Number 8 is that Toy Freddy, well, you know, he's kinda, fat. I mean, come on, come on, what can I say? He's gained a few pounds.
The immortal Smike he is. Some other stuff includes the really random fan name for the purple guy, which was Vincent. Never was a fan personally. There's also this fan-made SFM image of the FNAF 1 classics and toys, which is used in basically every news article about FNAF despite it being fan-made. Never really liked this image. I own a shirt of it, believe it or not. However, there's one big piece of FNAF 2 content that really blew up so much and is heavily looked back on fondly. That being the Living Tombstone's FNAF 2 song, It's Been So Long. This song is heavily praised and beloved by many people for its numerous aspects. This song is seen as arguably better than their FNAF 1 song. Hell, believe it or not, some people thought this song was secretly canon to the game and that the Living Tombstone and Scott had secret ties with each other. Obviously that's not true at all, but still, this song is pretty damn great and serves as a good notable song for the game. All of these were the results of such a big impact from FNAF 2. I think it's because of the grander scope this game approached, especially with the lore and story. It's really nice seeing what this game did for the series because this game really did do a lot for the FNAF series to blow up even more. It's impressive, in fact. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is quite the game. Now in short, while FNAF 2 is not a bad game, it certainly has a lot to be desired with what I would say has some objective flaws, mostly in the lacking atmosphere and horror and the missed opportunities in its gameplay. However, I will be honest and say that I still consider FNAF 2 to be a good game. It's not great or amazing, personally it's a little overrated, however I think it's at least a B-tier game that is good and can be pretty enjoyable and still does plenty of things right, whether it be, believe it or not, some things of the gameplay in regards to how it can be intense, or the once again memorable and iconic animatronics, but most of all, what it introduced when it came to the lore side of things. Introducing minigames, some type of identity for the murderer, yet still keeping him mysterious, some of the Easter eggs and secrets, and more. And hell, as much as this game deserves criticism, this game can be yet again thanked for the possibly getting the Five Nights at Freddy's series into much more mainstream popularity than it already had. Me personally, I will always love FNAF 2 from a nostalgic angle because of how this used to be one of the FNAF games I replayed the most for its rather chaotic gameplay, and also I love this game for my own personal satisfaction of how I beat 1020 mode for the first time and only time ever back in early 2023.
Do it. Just do it. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ah! 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 Ah!
Additionally, I'm excited for its movie adaptation as the reveal we got of Toy Freddy looks really damn cool. However, I cannot in good faith say that this game holds up that much for me. It's still a good game, mind you, but there are some problems with the game that hinder it. To the questions I asked in the intro, how much does this game succeed in being bigger and grander than the original? 50-50. In some aspects, yes. In some aspects, no. Is it better than the original? No, not a chance. Is it even good? Yes. Again, not great or amazing, but still yes, it's good. All around though, FNAF 2 is still an enjoyable time and experience that I'm sure a lot of people and fans can get behind, and it will stand as one of the FNAF games that you could argue changed everything. Next time on the Fazbear Retrospective, we got